I'll start by saying thank you ever so much for having me along tonight. I've been really looking forward to it. I'm here with 6 drams that I hope you enjoy or that you find interesting from an independent bottler called the Single Cask. So we touched a little bit on the Single Cask's kind of heritage and background when John asked me a couple of questions right at the very beginning of the call. But we were founded by a chap called Ben Curtis, who started his whiskey career out in Asia, where he worked as a distributor, helping some really big name brands build their reputation in the industry. And a lot of his time was somewhat naturally spent on their core bottles, their kind of big range stuff. But as he worked on the brands, the products that really stood out to him, the ones that really excited him, were the single cask expressions. So he often talks about the Glenfarclas Family Cask series, for example. And those he felt represented a really vivid, ever-changing journey that he absolutely loved. So he did, as probably many of us do, he bought far too many bottles and ended up with a collection that was probably too big for anyone. So he did the next logical thing, which was to start a bar. And that's the bar that John briefly mentioned. It's still going. It's in a beautiful old historic building in sunny Singapore. It's absolutely wonderful. And if you do find yourself in Singapore, do pop along, say hello to Brendan and team and have a dram. They'd love to see you. And as Ben worked in the bar and met people, he found more and more people loving Scotch, wanting to buy a cask, wanting to have a slice of the whiskey industry to call their own. And that quite naturally led him into the cask business. And from there, it was a fairly logical progression of creating our own label, the Single Cask. So we've been running for about 4 or 5 years, and as the journeys have evolved, our kind of focus has shifted back towards home, back towards the UK. So that gives me a segue into an introduction to myself. So my name is Ed. I've been around the London whiskey scene with a couple of different hats for the past 3 or 4 years, which I've thoroughly enjoyed. I had the opportunity to come on board with Ben to do perhaps a bit of a jack of all trades, but in particular to help him with our website and with our social media, things we really love. We find they're brilliant ways of connecting with and talking with whiskey lovers around the world. And then more specifically, close to home, just helping try and grow and establish the Single Cask here in the UK. I think we might recognise that we're maybe a slightly younger brand. If you come across us, fantastic, that's brilliant. If you haven't, then hopefully we've got some interesting drams to tempt you today, and hopefully you'll come across us again in the future. So that's a really quick intro. I'll give people a chance to ask as many questions about whatever they like in a moment, but so that you're not sat there just listening to me waffle on, I will take us to the first dram so we can at least sit and have a conversation over a whiskey. So let's go to the Benrinnes 10 and we'll start there. If people want to swap anything in the order later on, but it gives us a starting point. So the first dram we have is from Speyside, one of my favourite regions. It is 10 years old and was distilled in 2009. Like all the whiskies you're going to have tonight, and like all the whiskies we bottle under our own main brand, everything is cask strength, natural colour and non-chill filtered. And much like I wager John would say, and I wager many of you on the call would say, we do this because we want to try and bring the whiskey to whiskey lovers in as natural a state as possible, as close to how we find it in the cask as we possibly can. What you choose to do with it, how you choose to enjoy it thereafter, is absolutely up to you and entirely down to personal taste. So please do, if any of these have a bit of alcohol prickle for you, feel free to add a little bit of water as we go along. I usually say try it neat, see what you think, and then add a little bit of water, drop by drop, teaspoon by teaspoon, just to see whether it opens up for you and whether you find additional notes. So back to this dram, this is cask strength at 58.4%. It's an ex-bourbon hogshead. It's one of 324 bottles. So if we go to the whiskey and start diving into the really interesting stuff, if we start with the nose. So I like to think this is a good whiskey to start off with. For me, I get a sweet malt note coming through that I quite like as being kind of true to its character. And alongside that, I get a nice, fresh apple note, nice, crisp green apples. I get a bit of walnut coming through. Again, something I really like and something that I think works quite well with the apples, at least to my nose. And I think you do get some of that oak in there too, some of the oak from the cask maturation. If we go to the palate. So I get almost 3 groups of flavour here. I get what I might call kind of wood spice. And I'd characterize this as a kind of mixture of some of the spices, cinnamon, nutmeg, with a bit of pepper as well. I get that same malt that I got on the nose, which I quite like as being true to its character. And then again, I get this quite green, fresh, quite juicy note, a kind of combination of apples and perhaps some grapes in there too. And then the finish for me, I think it's a really nice rounded finish. I'd describe it as being about medium in length. And for me, it does round off some of the notes we talked about earlier. So I get the grapes again, get a bit of walnut, and I get some of the oak from the maturation as well.
You get a wonderful pepperiness on the palate, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it works really well. I think it's a nice combination of kind of the malty character, some of those juicy green notes, and then that spicy pepperiness. And I think they all work in harmony quite nicely. That's what I think. I am at this point going to open the floor. If there are any thoughts as we go along, if you want to start chucking in questions, please do. I'll give you a couple of moments to enjoy this dram, and then when we're all ready, we can move on.
Cheers, Ed. Felt like you described that perfectly. You know, every when you're going through the nose, you know, when you're talking about green apples, as soon as you said that, it was just like, ah, yes, you know, you can really. That's the one that I really got onto. So, and then I almost felt like what I'm getting on the nose is then coming through on the palate as well. Sometimes I find that whiskeys can be, this is what you smell and then this is what you taste. But that was you know, like a nice follow through, I thought.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that's really interesting. I also echo your observation that sometimes you've got whiskies that are very different, and you'll nose up something knowing exactly what you'll get, and you'll drink it and think, oh gosh, that's really different. That's not at all what I was expecting. And then you get whiskies a bit like this one that I think are quite honest, quite straightforward, very consistent. I was conscious as I was going through it, I was using the same or indeed similar words as I went through kind of nose, palate and finish. But I think that's because they are there and it's quite a consistent thread through the dram as you enjoy it.
Yeah,
I think there's also on the finish. There's quite a bit of meatiness. It's quite a light, medium-bodied kind of whiskey. I think. All of a sudden on the finish, I think it gets quite meaty.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think you're right. I think it does have a nice mouthfeel. I think it is there. I think light to medium is fair. But as you say, you do get an extra texture, an extra viscosity on the finish. And all of a sudden it goes kind of from light to medium through to medium and rounded, which is a really interesting trend.
Has anybody tried it with water? Because I'm enjoying it and I don't want to risk it.
Not yet, Mike, not yet.
Oh, well, I'm going to wait then.
Sorry, I've been there with the water and it's very nice. I like it.
Yeah?
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Let's give it a go.
Mike,
Yeah.
it certainly brings out the pepperness in it more. It reduces down the fire aspect.
Right.
Drowned a bit. All right.
I'm really getting the pepper though without the water. I find that a real pepper finish.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Black pepper comes through quite strongly. And I like that. I think that bit of seasoning gives it an extra character and an edge.
Yeah. Guys, what price is this one?
So this one is £60. I have taken the liberty, if there are any bottles that people are interested in setting you up a club discount code, just as a bit of a thank you for having me along. So if there is anything you want to bag a bottle of, whether it's one we tried tonight or indeed anything else in the shop, do use discount code SD10 and that will take 10% off the price. So normally 60, but you can take 10% off.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And if you use SD20, what do we get?
Well, we'll see how much whiskey I drink throughout the course of the night. What I should do is I should leave an Easter egg number in there, something that's between 10 and 100, but I won't tell you what the number is. And I'll leave you all just to sit there typing through every combination you can think of.
Trust me, one of us will. Don't you, kid?
You'll probably have a really coordinated plan and just divide it in sets of numbers amongst you all.
Yeah,
There's so many times
before. Nigel's so quiet at the moment.
Take 10 apiece.
There you go, Martin. I'll start at 100, you start at 0, and we'll work our way to the middle, yeah?
Exactly.
I'm already up to 32.5.
Excellent. Well, I don't want to rush you all, so I'm going to be very much guided by the pace that suits you. When people are ready, we can move on to the next round.
Cracking dram to start with, though, Ed. I really enjoyed that. That's fantastic.
Good. I'm really glad, John. Good. Strong start. I mean, you guys might all be really used to drinking single cask whiskey, in which case you can completely ignore what I'm about to say. But one of the things I do say is that single casks are all inherently different and inherently varied. There is going to be a massive spectrum. You will find single cask releases that aren't your cup of tea, and you'll hopefully find single cask releases that really do press your buttons and you love. I think that's part of the joy and excitement of enjoying single cask releases. It's absolutely A-OK if there are any you're not so keen on tonight. I certainly won't take offense. I'd be really interested and curious in the ones that work for you and the ones that don't work for you. All I tend to say is that in recognizing that spectrum, hopefully you'll at least kind of almost understand and respect the different angles the single casks are coming from, almost regardless of whether you like it. Hopefully you'll be able to say, I'm really glad I tried it. That was a really interesting angle. Not quite for me, but I'm glad I've been able to experience it.
Weird. Hey, just a wee quick question before you move on. Were you around when Ben opened up another single cask bar in England a few years ago?
No, that one was before my time. I know
I just couldn't believe it. He had this bar, like the bar in Singapore, single cask whiskey, in this very small town, whose name I cannot remember, near Peterborough.
Yeah.
What a strange place to open up such a dedicated whiskey bar, but it didn't last too long.
No, Ben is all heart. Ben is super passionate about what he does. And for him, he gets loads of excitement from these projects. So I'm not surprised that it was something he wanted to do and something that he wanted to try. I think you're right. I think location was always going to count against it, unfortunately. And sure enough, it didn't quite get the footfall it needed to be viable and long term. That's okay. That's part of the learning process.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as Ben's kind of trying to grow and establish, I guess part of what my job now is to, how do I say this politely? Compliment his big heart with just a little bit of a voice in the back of his head saying,
sure.
Steer in this direction. Well, look, let me guide us on to the next dram. We can have a little bit of a talk about this one, and then again we can pause and have a little bit of a chat. So we are staying in Speyside for this one. This is a Linkwood. It's 11 years old, distilled in 2007. It's 54.7%, so it's slightly lighter on ABV than the dram we've just tried. It's also ex-bourbon, an ex-bourbon hogshead. It's one of 156 bottles.
That is incredible, Ed. So the Ben Rinnis, which was also a hogshead, 300 and odd bottles.
Yeah, it's quite a swing.
And this is a hogshead just a little bit older, and it's way down to 100 and something. Isn't that incredible how some casks behave compared to other casks?
It absolutely is. And I think I'm a bit of a romantic, and I think one of the things I love about whiskey is it is part science and part really clever people doing really clever processes.
Yeah.
Bit like John. And then it's the art and the magic that can't be controlled. And you can make educated guesses, of course you can, but when all is said and done, you are rolling the dice and seeing over the course of half a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, what you get left. And as John said,
I don't know if you've ever seen it, everybody. There is a video called The Myth and the Magic that you were describing there, Ed. And if you go on the web and look up, you can get it lasts about an hour, this Myth and the Magic show. It's now about 15 years old, I think. But you get a 13-minute free trailer of it, you know? And it's quite fascinating because it backs up everything you've just said. It's people like Nick Morgan and lots of master distillers effectively saying that the flavour that you get and you make spirit from each, they really don't know sometimes how it happens. It is just magic, you know. Science cannot explain it, you know.
No, I love it. I love it, and I think, you know, where you're a really big brand, that can be a challenge in its own right. You know, how do you produce a consistent product that you can sell all around the world in you know, millions of units? But for us, you know, that doesn't matter. If we come across one cask, and if that cask had, pick a ridiculous number, 50 bottles in it, but those 50 were absolutely brilliant, then we love that. We love the uniqueness. We're delighted to bottle it. And while it's a shame to see something delicious disappear, it does add a certain kind of magic to being able to enjoy it and be able to reminisce about it.
Well, all I want to say is that the Angels are pretty happy with that barrel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, some of the outturns do surprise me. But yeah, that would be a big loss and a very happy set of Angels. So let's go to this one. So if we start with the nose, for me, I get lots and lots of green fruits. I think actually this is quite an interesting dram to continue from the last one, because I think actually there are slight crossovers and synergies here. But I get pear, I get other green fruits. So for me, I am going to go to grapes again, because that is what I get alongside a bit of almost kiwi in there. I think I can still get some sweet malt.
Very floral Ed, I think.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
I got that the other night.
One of our team, Brendan, talks about this almost being a bit of a kind of a fruit basket on like a hot summer's day, where you get that mixture of fruity notes, but as you say, John, it's fruit combined with floral, as if almost it's ripening in that bowl.
The old fruit salad sweets.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I like that, fruit salad sweets. Yeah. So if we go to the palate. Again, now I've got fruit salad sweets in my head. I'm getting some of that. But I think I do still get some of those fruity notes. So I get pear and kiwi again coming through. I get some of the wood. And I think the wood is manifesting itself in the form of the oakiness and some of the wood spice, that cinnamon note. And I do drink quite a bit of green tea in a typical working day, and I almost get some of those green tea notes coming through. And then,
well, we were just talking about how there's a type of whiskey that we like to talk about quite a lot in this club, which is a breakfast whiskey. And
that kind of whiskey.
Yeah, and I was just saying that I think as it is, it's kind of just a bit too full on, but I reckon once I add a bit of water, it will kind of calm it down a bit, and we'll be right at that kind of sweetness and mellowness, just to have a nice breakfast whiskey.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. It's always the problem when you're enjoying a whiskey by one individual dram as opposed to a bottle. So I appreciate this is harder to do with samples. Well, one of the things I love to do when I've got the luxury of a full bottle is when I have one of my first drams, to borrow a phrase from Roy of Aqua Vitae, almost test it to destruction. So you sit there with a little glass of water and just take it down in very small increments, half a teaspoon at a time, but not worry about over-watering it. It's the first dram, I've got a full bottle left. And what that then allows you to do, exactly as you described, is just find that sweet spot, whatever it is, for whatever the dram. And I think it's a really fascinating experience, because not only does it tell you exactly how you like that dram, but it allows you to almost dissect the flavours and notes you get as you bring the ABV down, as you allow the whiskey to open up.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah. I love that. That's very nice.
I think for the older club members, I'd say this is a pretty good bridge whiskey as well.
Excellent. Excellent.
He's not talking about playing bridge either. It goes hand in hand with the breakfast idea too.
People don't know what bridge is about. Why don't you tell them, Kim?
Well, you always got to have a good bridge, a dram on a bridge before breakfast. If it's a bit chilly in the morning, then all the more reason for having the dram on the bridge.
Okay, tell us, what was the bridge?
Oh, any bridge.
Craig Ellachie, normally.
Craig Ellachie Bridge, where you can see the Highlander Inn. That's
Amsterdam was a challenge.
I like the sound.
We managed it.
So many bridges, so little time, Nudge.
But so many bridges, so many whiskies.
You have to do it for breakfast.
I've built a bridge between both rooms of my house now, so I can have one there.
Well, you and Neil are next door. Maybe you could put a bridge over the back fence.
Neil could come round to my garage. We've got a lockdown project. Put a bridge.
Take your sleeping bag, Neil.
We talked into that, don't worry.
I think a bridge over the back fence would be nice, Neil. What do you reckon?
I'm not sure whether, Mrs. Bew and Mrs. Crew might approve of that one. There you go.
Well, you haven't got many people in your house, and I've not got many people in my house, so we could combine.
You're not going to form a whiskey bubble, are you?
Whiskey bubble.
I thought that wisteria had to go, so it's a perfect example. You go, oh, sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you said bridge.
You might have got me by the end of the evening, put it that way.
I've got a heater for outside.
What do people think of this one versus the first one?
Ben Rins for me.
I prefer it.
Interesting. Split crowd.
Yeah, I must admit, I tried a little bit of this the other night, Ed, when we poured out the samples, and it was absolutely stunning then. But I'm now finding after the Ben Rins, it's a bit more fuller, and it definitely, with the added water, it's better. But I just thought after the Ben Rins, yes, sorry, I just had a thought about the inch fad we had at the last tasting with Carl.
It's always one of the challenges of doing these, because you will experience exactly what you just described. You'll experience a whiskey that you have by itself, and you look at it, you consider it in isolation, and you find what you really like. And then when you do something like this, and you put whiskies side by side, it can be an advantage and a disadvantage. It can be an advantage because you're then able to compare and contrast. But in comparing and contrasting, you can then almost lose your shine on one. It's quite tricky. But as long as you find stuff you like.
That's the main thing.
I think both of them have been brilliant, Ed. I think. I mean, I don't think I think they're very different. And it just goes back to what you were saying at the introduction to this one. Here you've got two whiskies from Speyside, both from ex-bourbon kids, both similar age, and what an incredible difference, It's just amazing, I think the Ben Rins had that pepperiness and spiciness, and this one I think is more floral and fruity. It's just both lovely, when I put a lot about water and liquid, I was actually getting Punnock's caramel wafers.
Ooh. Yeah, that's really interesting. But I think you're absolutely spot on, John. I mean, if you were to look at those two whiskies on paper side by side, as you say, same region, ostensibly the same age, ostensibly the same ABV, same maturation, they ought to be very, very similar. And there are crossovers. If I were to describe it, I might say you can kind of tell they're from the same family tree, but there are big differences too. And I think you're right. I think you've got spicy with fruit, and then you've got floral with fruit.
Yeah.
And it kind of depends what your palate likes. If you like counterbalance, then I think probably the spice combination works quite well. Whereas if you like kind of maybe slightly sweeter, smoother, then the floral fruit I think works quite well. But as we keep saying, that's the joy of single cask. Try as many as you can. Find the ones you love, double down.
Absolutely.
And I think the difference for me is Ben Rins is kind of there was a lot more to it. There was so much to it. It was something that I would sit down and enjoy and think about. Whereas the Liquid is something that it was easy to drink and sweet, where I would just sit down and drink it because it was enjoyable, rather than having to sit down and think about it.
I think, Aidan, I'd agree with you by and large, except I would put the Ben Rins down as maybe a lunchtime whiskey, whereas the Liquid's an evening dram,
Yeah.
I like that. One of the things I sometimes say, maybe a little cliched, but if the idea of nose, palate and finish are 3 tasting notes, I think almost time, place, and people for me are 3 further tasting notes. Because there are drams I have that, as you say, suit a particular time or a particular mood. You know, maybe you want to sit and analyse, or maybe you want to sit and watch a Saturday film and just kind of zone out and enjoy. Maybe you're with friends and you want to dissect. Maybe you're introducing someone new to whiskey. Maybe you're reminiscing with an old friend. All of these different moods and attributes, I feel, have a bearing on certainly the sense of enjoyment of a whiskey, if not almost the perception of that whiskey. And again, I love that. I think that's really, really special.
No, and also, Ed, what can happen is that you can have a whiskey which you really enjoy, you know, and you could drink it, have a half a bottle left, and all of a sudden, weeks, months later, go back to that whiskey and it can blow you away. Think, my God, that is sensational.
Yeah.
It was good before, because it depends on where and when and situation stuff. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
I had an SMWS Aaron, which I drank half of, and I went back to it one night, and I just thought it was incredible. And I thought, why did I not think that when I was having a drink of it before? So it's amazing, you know. Even if you think you don't like a whiskey, go back to it later, you know. And
I couldn't agree more. And I think, again, difficult to do with samples, but as you say, if you ever buy a bottle of whiskey that you don't like, as John rightly says, just put it to one side. Don't worry about it. Just leave it there, and give it a second chance and a third chance. And maybe it won't change. Maybe it's just not for you. But I would agree. I can remember it's actually a Cavalan. It was a Cavalan port cask I had, and Evan, one of my best friends, bought it for me. I tried it when he bought it for me. I was so disappointed because I just did not like it at all. I was expecting lots of good things and it didn't deliver. And then about 9 months later, I was running low on whiskey and didn't have many bottles left. This was before I got this place. So I thought, okay, well, I want a dram, so I'm just going to have to make do with what I've got, and I'll try this again. And exactly as John said, it was as if I was drinking a completely different whiskey.
Different whiskey, yeah.
Awesome. Well, shall I guide us onto our third dram? And then we can have, as I say, what I think is probably one of the best whiskey tasting traditions I've come across, this mid-flight beer. The third one we've got, I think it's going to be pretty different. It'd be really interesting to see what you think, but I think if we've commented on the difference between the first two, I think we'll probably comment on the difference with this one even more. So it's a Royal Brackler. It's 11 years old, distilled in 2006. We are upping the ABV. So we're going up to 60.9% on this one. So it is quite a bit higher. And do remember about the water. Maybe try it as it is. If you happen to get prickled, do try with water. It's also ex-bourbon, and it's 285 bottles from this one. So if we go to the nose, I get quite a lot in this. I always do. I've had it in a few tastings, and I always think there's quite a lot going on. So on the nose for me, I get fruit and I get barley. I get a slight musty note. I describe it, again, without wanting to sound overly romantic, a bit like when you're walking through an old forest and you come across the old, slightly kind of damp oak, surrounded by the ferns and all the shrubbery. I get at least reminiscent of that. And then I do get a slight peppery note, again, coming through. On the palate, so on the palate, for me, this is quite a nice, rich, sweet whiskey. I get a kind of combination of the cask oak and spice in there, with some sugar notes, almost kind of like the rock sugar notes, and then almost a white wine influence in there. Again, I mentioned I do drink green tea, so I almost get this slight medley of white wine and green tea. On the finish, so I think it's quite gentle but quite long in its finish. I get sweetness. I get more of that white wine. And I do get that same sense of kind of the old oak in there at the back. That's me, and I will turn the table over to you.
Yeah.
I was definitely getting the white wine, no doubt about it.
I think so as well.
I was always getting freshly cut spring grass.
Yeah, yeah, and that's almost some of that kind of green note for me. It's kind of green ferns, but I agree. You know, cut grass, maybe a little damp. Yeah. I've just seen somebody's chat pop up saying finding this a bit more complex, and I would agree. I do, every time I have this, find quite a lot going on.
Yeah, I think so. Very good. I don't know how the hell I get this working.
My pal is saying it reminds him of the bubble gum.
Nice.
He used to have at Partick Thistle FC when he was a boy.
Very good.
Spearmint bubble gum.
Yeah, yeah.
That must be a record, John. We've been at this for nearly 3/4 of an hour.
It's not the full name, Partick Thistle Nil.
That's the old Billy Connolly joke, isn't it?
Yeah.
Billy Connolly was doing a talk, a comedy scene, an audience of famous people. And he said, I was brought up in Partick, where the football team Partick Thistle FC started. He said, and I say that because most people think they're called Partick Thistle Nil.
So how do people feel between kind of the three? Comparisons, likes, anything not quite your cup of tea, favourites?
I really like this one. This is a tiny little drop of water, and this is super. It really opens.
Yeah, good. I did, again, I saw a chat about maybe just finding it a little harsh in the throat. I too would say, once you've enjoyed trying it neat, try it with a little bit of water. It is a higher ABV. You're into the 60s here, so you are going to get some of that alcohol coming through, and bringing it down a touch, adding a bit of water so that it's maybe more like the mid-50s of the two we tried first, or indeed low 50s, a tad below that. I think you might find that it evolves in the glass, but it's worth a try.
Definitely enjoyed this one alongside some of the earlier ones, just because, again, as you mentioned, you get the green tea notes. And
good.
Yeah, that's really
excellent. Good. Excellent. I'm glad you've enjoyed it. And the grapes, always the grapes.
I still prefer the liquid over this one, and even with the water in it, I'm finding that one quite rough really to drink. But the liquid just goes down much more smoothly.
And that'll be a-okay. I think they are very, very different, and you know, people will look for different things, and that for me is always part of the curiosity, part of the excitement.
I'm finding there's quite a bit of like peppery aftertaste with this one.
Yeah.
Is that with water, Mike, or?
Yeah, with a drop of water.
I found it's quite long, isn't it? You get that. You sort of think, bloody hell. And there's a pepper after, almost after the event.
Yeah.
I think it's quite dry and kind of minty at the back. You were saying pepperiness, Mike, but I'm getting a kind of a mintiness, you know, menthol kind of finish.
Yeah, I think I get an element of that menthol too.
Yeah.
Yeah, particularly going back to it.
I'd go along with that. You get that sort of bit of freshness, and so like you've had extra strong mints or something.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think that the mint does just lift it a little bit. It's kind of, in some respects, it's quite a curious mixture because you've got kind of richer, heavier, sweeter notes, and then you do have some of the notes like the wine, maybe a little bit of pepper, green tea, menthol, that are a bit lighter in profile.
James is saying worryingly drinkable. I love that phrase.
I think when you come across a bottle that's above 60 that you describe as worryingly drinkable, worrying probably is an apt adjective.
Yeah. Well, I just think, Ed, I mean, I get such a lovely whiskey that even at 60% neat, it doesn't give you that, like, oh my God, this is too strong, you know?
Yeah,
Whiskies will do that, even at 52, 53%. But at 60%, I think that's
the worrying part.
So, John, when you say 60%, the discount we're being offered.
Oh, nice try. You're going to have to work your way through all the numbers. I'm not telling you. Yeah, no, it's an interesting observation, John. I must admit, as I've gone on my personal whiskey journey, there are things that I worry a lot less about. So versus, say, 4 years ago, I'm a lot less fussed about age statements, or I'll rephrase that. I'm a lot less fussed whether it's young or old in terms of age statements. I enjoy a far wider range of flavour profiles, perhaps like many. When I first started drinking whiskey, peat was not quite my bag, whereas now I absolutely love it. But two of the things I've found that I do particularly look for in my favourite whiskies are, number one, mouthfeel. So I personally really like quite a viscous, quite a mouth-coating whiskey. And number two, how well integrated is the alcohol? So regardless of whether it's, you know, quite low, let's say low 50s or low 60s in this case, does it feel well crafted? Does it feel as if the alcohol has been integrated into the body of the whiskey well? And those are two hallmarks that I do find myself coming back to quite consistently.
Absolutely. I think you're right, Ed. I think that the chill filter is a big debate, isn't there? There always has been about whether chill filtering actually takes flavour. But the one thing for sure it does take away is mouthfeel.
Yeah.
It reduces mouthfeel. So we're drinking non-chill filtered stuff here, so you're going to get a better idea of mouthfeel than you would if it had been chill filtered, you know?
Yes, spot on. I totally agree. I get why it's done. I understand that. I random aside, I did industrial design at university, which is all about, you know, creating a product for mass consumerism. So the logic's fine and absolutely A-OK.
Absolutely.
But I do agree with you, John, that I think it is inevitable when you do a process like that, you are quite literally stripping something out of the whiskey.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm not really bothered about whether it goes cloudy or not. It's largely irrelevant.
No, absolutely. But
An artisan natural product.
I think, Ed, more and more, as people get more knowledgeable about whiskey, they're beginning to understand now about this. There's no harm in that cloudiness. And maybe some way down the track we'll get to the point where we don't have to do it anymore. and more distilleries now, malt whisky distilleries, who are bottling over 46% and not chill filtering. So you get the added alcohol, but you don't get the cloudiness when you add water or ice. So I think that trend can only continue.
I think so. I think you're right. I think it's just education. I had a customer that bought one of our whiskies. They were overseas, and I did wonder whether in getting the whiskey overseas, maybe in colder temperatures, it affected it. But anyway, customer reached out saying, "Oh, the bottle's arrived, but it's got cloudy bits in it. Is it okay? Is it defective?" And I quite patiently just explained what was going on, why it was like that. And the customer then left really, really happy and actually quite pleased that they'd come across an artisan quality product. It's not bad. You just need to explain it so that the customer understands why it's like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm conscious I've talked, well, no, we've had a good discussion for a little while, and we're about halfway through, well, we are halfway through our flight. So in club tradition, is that the natural beer break?
Yeah. I think we've reached a good point, haven't we?
Yeah. I mean, we're going at a nice pace, I think, because we're having each whiskey, having a nice chat. So about an hour in, that's a nice time for a beer break, I think.
Well, at least there's been that bit of research which says that people who drink a reasonable amount of Scotch whisky are not likely to catch it.
That's right. Straight skin it, don't they?
Yeah, apparently it's the only vaccine known at the moment.
That's a good one.
John, can you quantify how much is reasonable?
No, Martin, now you're talking. Well, I'll tell you what, at Christmas, my wife's family, the whole family all gathered at one place, right? It used to be our house, but we can't do that anymore.
Yeah, somewhere else, John.
A house we rented in we're all there for a week, right, in Gosport. The whole family. Some people were staying there for a week, and some people came and went. Towards the end of the week, this is obviously just after Christmas, everybody who was at the house or had visited the house got norovirus, except 2 people.
The 2 whiskey drinkers.
Me and my father-in-law. And he's Irish. And guess who had drank the most during? So I just think that's irrefutable proof.
Absolutely.
I've submitted it to the BMA as a piece of research.
Well done, John. Well done.
I guess, John, you're still continuing this in-depth research.
Yes.
It never ends, doesn't it?
Good.
Absolutely.
Sacrifices you make, John.
Sorry?
The sacrifices you make.
I know. All for the good old fellow man. Where the hell is that you're sitting? Is that your shelves behind there? Or is he sitting in a bar?
I wish so. Yeah, if that's my shelves, John, you'd be round here tomorrow, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, yes.
I chose a background, shall we say?
All right, okay.
But I must admit, it creates a bit of an impact on some of my customer meetings when I use this background. There we go. There could be scarier backgrounds. You could have Martin.
Absolutely, yeah.
You could have my arse as well.
We wouldn't be the first, would we?
Now we're down.
John's getting excited now.
I tell you what, there's been 3 cracking whiskies so far, hasn't it?
Really good, yeah. Really interesting. Yeah. They've been really different, but really interesting. And
yes.
Really looking forward to the next 3.
I was checking my tasting notes, and this is the 3rd tasting I've had with Ed over the last 3 months.
Is it?
Yeah.
I wonder whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
A sucker for punishment, or you got?
Yeah.
You got caught out of there, Kim. You hadn't realised he'd come back, had you?
Knock into the conversation at just the right moment.
By the way, Ed, I've got you on my post-lockdown list because we've got some business that we're talking about which we never get a chance to finish because of this bloody thing. So as soon as we get a chance, we'll get back together again.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds great. Absolutely. I'll look forward to it.
Sure.
I must admit, Ed, Aidan and I were pouring out the samples the other night, and my daughter came around. She absolutely loves the bottles. She said, "Can I have those bottles?"
Empty ones.
Yeah, I must. They do look something different.
I'm glad you like them. Yeah, we're quite keen on the bottles. We're quite passionate because for us it's a balancing act. And what I mean by that is, on the one hand, we believe that really it is all about the whiskey at the end of the day. And while we could do, really, really, really fancy packaging, and that's fine for those that want to do it, we slightly feel that then not only distracts from the whiskey, but you're shifting your costs basically, because the packaging isn't free, right? So we prefer in some respects to keep it simple. But on the other hand, we are romantic. I certainly am. So we wanted to create something that had a sense of occasion to it. That moment, maybe not during lockdown, but in normal circumstances, you're able to get a group of friends together, you sit around
for the Portugal days,
and you're able to put a bottle in the middle of the table as a sense of occasion, celebration, which is why we have kind of this decanter style bottle. So yeah, we're proud of it, and I'm very glad she likes it.
Yeah, and the fact the label is sort of half one side of the bottle, it adds to it, and the thickness of the glass. Aidan was saying,
well,
the bottles behind you, Ed.
Yes, let me just pick an example. So this is the kind of the normal 700 milliliter bottle. It's square or rectilinear.
Like a decanter, isn't it?
It is quite heavy glass, which again, it's that sense of almost a Victorian style decanter. We put the label to one side, and there is a reason for that. The reason is that we believe the colour of the whiskey is actually part of its beauty. It doesn't matter whether it's dark or light, somewhere in between the two. It's part of its natural fingerprint. We want people to be able to see that on the front of the bottle. And then the label itself has all the key details you need, but it avoids being fluffy. Because again, we want the whiskey to do the talking. So it's transparent, it's honest, you know what you're drinking, you've got all the facts, but then beyond that, you're able to make your own conclusion.
Yeah.
And do we have to have a US flag in it, or is that an option?
No, so I probably picked not a bad example, but a random example. So that's one of the ones we're having tonight.
Okay.
Normally they've got the copper still on them. I don't know how well that's on the camera.
That's it.
This one that I randomly picked up is an American corn whiskey, which is why it's got the US flag on it.
Okay, that's you off. One advantage of the square bottles, they're stuck neatly on the shelf.
I was just about to say that, yeah. They really fit on the shelves well.
They do look really cool. Yeah, you get them all placed together. It's like a glass brick wall, except the brick wall is full of delicious whiskey.
Yeah, excellent.
My other half is a doctor, and she's doing her thesis. So she has to do lots of video conferences, and she does her video conferences from the position I'm in. So for 99% of this deep medical talk, I don't have the foggiest what they're talking about, except for the end of the call, where although I don't know what they've said, I can tell what's being discussed because she'll say, oh no, this isn't actually my whiskey collection. My other half, the single cask, if you'd like to check them out, I'm sure he'd be very grateful. And that always makes me smile that all these high-flying doctors have spent the entire video call looking at the whiskey collection.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You actually say my collection's much bigger than that one.
True, I am outgunned, I will be the first to admit.
Right, getting thirsty again now, I think, Ed.
Excellent. Well, shall we use that as a cue and go on to our fourth dram?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so again, something a little bit different now. So we've got a Macduff. This one is older versus the rest of the lineup, so we are tweaking this variable and going up to 19 years old.
Blimey.
So yeah, this is older. This is 53.5%, so more middle of the rung ABV wise, and it is ex-bourbon. I think actually these tonight were quite consistent on that front. One of 273 bottles. So without further ado, if we take ourselves to the tasting notes. So we start with the nose. So again, I find this one quite complex. I get quite a lot going on. For me, it starts with a herbaceous, a herbal note. I get, you can almost slightly reminiscent of doing your cooking. You get a bit of sage and a bit of sea salt coming through.
Oh dear.
I do get sweetness to go with that more savoury note though. So for me, it's kind of that toasted marshmallow, slightly toasted caramelised strawberry. And then it ends with a slight floral note, perhaps floral and a bit of barley in there. So if we go to the palate. So for me on the palate, I do get that sweetness that we talked about in the form of kind of toasted marshmallow. I also get, sticking with the kind of dessert theme, almost kind of like peaches and honey coming through. But we talked about with the first dram a sense of balance. And for me, in this dram, that sweetness and that peachy note is counterbalanced by some spice, and it's a bit hotter than pepper. It is almost like a chili flake heat. I don't find that unpleasant. I quite like that, and I think that works with the sweetness well. And then on the finish, so on the finish, it's almost a combination of the nose and the palate, because I get the kind of the sweetness I got through on the palate in particular, with some of those herbaceous, savoury notes from the nose. And there is a slight oiliness there too, that's kind of adding to the texture. That's me. So again, I am going to...
Right, fancy popping over for a barbecue tomorrow?
Barbecue sounds great, I'm in.
This is sort of like speechless whiskey. This is, wow.
Good, I'll take that. Good tasting note.
You can see by the feedback, everyone's stunned.
Right, do we need a second mortgage?
No, you don't, because I've just looked and it's sold out. It was 119, but it's sold out.
Yeah, so
see, so Ed, you're teasing us now.
I do feel a little bad about this. So I'll just comment on this. So yeah, I've got some of tonight's bottles left. Unfortunately, a couple of them have sold out. I've got proxies. I've got I think about 34 whiskies online at the moment. So hopefully, whether it's one of the ones we're trying tonight or indeed any of the others, you'll be able to find something you like. I am afraid, as you've rightly said, the Macduff has sold out. Price point wise, we do try and play a straight bat. I appreciate that these are premium products and the price point makes them a treat. But equally, we try and be honest. We're a really small team. So you've got Ben that we talked about earlier, got a chap called Torsten who looks after Europe, Brendan we mentioned running the Singapore bar, chap called Evan who does operations, and myself online and marketing. That's it. We've got no office, we've not really got any fixed costs beyond stock. We try and put all the value into what we do and the product we put out there. And we try and keep the price points as accessible as we can, noting it's a premium product and the tax man likes this category. But yeah, I hope you're able to find something you like. And as I said earlier, if you do, please do let me buy you a dram or two out of it by using
Here are the donuts. I want donuts.
Or any number in between for those that want to guess.
I just wanted to come to Ed's defense quickly, which is Ed didn't send us these bottles. Chris and I bought these, so we've obviously bought this before it sold out. So sorry about that, Mike.
No. I'm just saying. I look because it's such a good dram. I was really enjoying it.
Yeah.
And but we've had that so many times in different tastings because when you get a good whiskey, it goes. Yeah. And I think that's, that says a lot for the whiskey.
Yeah, definitely.
Trouble is, Mike, that's the trouble with single cask, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's in the name, isn't it?
At least it lasts more than 5 seconds, John.
Let me swing it a positive way. By choosing this dram, you've been able to try it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Good pick, Aidan.
Yeah.
There's like a quarter of an inch left in the bottle. I'm open for bribery.
All of them knows how much Kim and Aidan drank between them when they were pouring the bottles.
Yeah.
No. It was all fair play. It was all fair play.
Yeah.
I bet he was interested in the next one. He likes a drop of Ardmore, does our kid?
Ardmore, never heard of it.
I was getting quite a lot of nuttiness there, Ed. Also kind of orange liqueur,
Yeah.
Vermouth in that, it was wonderful.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I said, so for me, it's kind of peaches and honey, but I totally see where you're going with the orange liqueur. It's that sweet but fruity, syrupy sweet in there.
Yeah.
And then the nutty note. I do agree. I like this one because in my head you've got sweet, you've got savoury, and maybe we can kind of put nutty in that category, and then we've got that spiciness. And I think those three sit well together.
That's fantastic. So it's not a whiskey you see a lot of, is it, Macduff? So
no, it's not. And
I'm glad we had the chance tonight.
Yeah, one of the questions I am sometimes asked is what we look for in a whiskey. Usually, I say the short answer is something delicious. We are not fussy in regards to what we bottle. We will bottle Scottish, Irish, English, American. We'd love to do more Asian and world. Slightly trickier, so we've not done lots in that regard, but we'd be very, very keen to.
But remember, if you get some Japanese, it might be Ben Nevis bottled as Japanese,
Yeah.
You have to remember that, I don't know if you saw that programme a few years ago, it was a 3-parter about whiskey, just whiskey generally across the world. It was led by David Heyman, the actor. He was a kind of a documentary, you know.
I did.
I interviewed Dave Broom, and Dave Broom said, there is no doubt, he said, that the Japanese make the best Japanese whiskey in the world.
Fair statement.
But a lot of them import it from Scotland and Australia and label it as Japanese whiskey because they can do that, you know. But it makes some good whiskies around the world now.
You do have to be careful, and one of the things we are very, very keen on as a brand is honesty and transparency, because we don't mind whether it's young, old, anywhere it comes from. We're very comfortable being honest about that. We think that's got to be celebrated, but we do believe you should be transparent so that if someone wants to know the facts, they've got the facts available to them. But with regards to what we bottle, as I say, you know, principle number 1, if it's delicious, we want to bottle it and bring it to whiskey lovers. Principle number 2, and the slightly longer answer to what we look for in a cask is typically we look for either a good example of what a particular distillery does really well, a good example of a particular maturation technique, or an example of something unusual that you don't see every day. And they're kind of the 3 things that we tend to look for in our cask picks, as long as the first principle is always true.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, shall I lead us on to our next dram, our 5th dram? So we can go to the Ardmore. So this is a 10-year-old. It's 2008. It was distilled 2008 vintage. It is cask strength again, as ever, at 57.8.
57.8, yeah.
57.8.
Okay.
And as ever, as this lineup seems to be, this is also ex-bourbon. So if we go to the tasting.
Spitted.
Yes, and I think on the nose you get some of that smoke straight away. So I think that is a good guess straight off. So I was just about to say,
that's a good moment for me.
Get that smokiness with a slight saltiness too, actually, almost as if it's peat by the sea, which is slightly curious, but I really, really enjoy. There's again there's a kind of slightly green, slightly musty note. I think I used the idea of that forest walk and an oak log with moss and ferns for one of the other whiskies, and I'm going to borrow that again here. And there's also a mineral note. For me, it's a slight kind of slate granite note on the palate.
Oh,
it's very peppery.
Very smooth, I think, this one.
I think there is some pepper there. For me, it's not personally one of the predominant notes, but it is there. I get a creamy vanilla note, which I think I would probably say is a nod to the barrel. I get the smoke. It's not too strong on the palate. I think maybe it comes out a bit more prominent on the nose, but you definitely get the smoke. And then I get a soft stone fruit kind of peach note in there right at the back as well. And then on the finish.
That's very, very smooth. It's lovely to drink.
I agree. I think it's nice, smooth. I get many of the notes I've walked through already on the nose and the palate. I think it's quite consistent in that regard. I get vanilla again. Yes, I get the smoke, get stone fruits, and I think there is a bit of oak in there too. I think it's a very nice dram. I think it ticks quite a few boxes. But again, that's me. I am going to open the floor and throw it back to you guys again.
I think over the years, Ed, I've drank so much heavily peated whiskey that when I get a lightly peated whiskey now, sometimes I struggle with it. But I'm getting this through this. I'm getting like somebody having a barbecue 2 doors down. You know, it's like a light smokiness. You know, on the nose. And it's the first time ever I can ever remember. I've written down here, rusty iron.
Ooh, yeah.
And I'm also thinking of porridge and cream.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you three quick responses to that. First is, I think your choice to pause after the half sentence, sometimes I drink so much, was an interesting point to pause. I thought that was just a statement there, and you were moving on. I think the second point I'd make is, for me, whenever anyone says, I don't like peat, I don't like smoke, I try and gently push back and say, think of it as an ingredient. Think of going to a barbecue or going to a nice restaurant and enjoying a meat or anything that has been cooked on a barbecue and just picked up a little smoky note to it. You've got all the other flavors in your food. You've got lots else going on. You just got that slight element of smoke that then complements and accentuates everything else that's on the plate. And as you say, while you can get, obviously, very, very heavily peated drams where the smoke is more predominant, I think a little bit of peat and a little bit of smoke, as per the light barbecue case study, can really complement and bring something extra to the dram. And then, yeah, I think your rusty nail is really interesting. I described it as a slight mineral note. And I think kind of that rusty nail does slightly fit into that stony granite, slate, iron category. I'd agree.
I think it's I read somewhere that your olfactory senses start to decline in your 60s. Obviously, that doesn't apply to anybody here, and I'll let you know when that happens in a few years' time. You know.
Cheers, John. Yeah, the Ardmore, as Mike alluded to before, I love Ardmore, but it tends to be a mix of, I mean, as you said, Ed, the light smoke over the top, which is just a finish, but Ardmore can be so complex. It can be meaty, it can be farmyard, it can be mechanic's garage, and sometimes you get one or all of them. But yeah, I love Ardmore, and this is good. I like this.
Yeah, I don't usually like Ardmore, but this is a cracking drink. Very nice.
Good. I'm really glad you like it. I wager many on this call have done this. But one of my favourite activities when you go to one of the big name distilleries that have the very big retail brands is, if you're lucky enough to or are able to, getting into the warehouses and trying some of their single casks, particularly some of the single casks that they themselves say, no, we wouldn't necessarily bottle this under our own brand. Because it is so distinct and it is so different. And it is a reminder, again, a bit like we discussed in the first half, the science and the art, that there can be massive variation, even within one distillery, even within a distillery that you think has a very clear house style, possibly because that house style has been very carefully curated. And that's the one that they've actively decided to push out to customers. Yeah, I personally love distilleries that you can go to or sample from, and they offer you lots of different angles, and you think, oh wow, is that really from XYZ? That's not at all what I would have expected from them.
Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed the Ardmore.
Yeah, it's very good.
It's been a whiskey I used to buy every time I went through airports at Heathrow and Edinburgh. And since I haven't been travelling to Scotland, I haven't been buying. So I'm getting a bit low. But the flavours are great. I've just...
yes, absolutely.
remember the flavours tonight.
Yeah.
Even a drop of water brings it back to the strength they sold at the airport.
Yeah.
Good. I know. I'm really, really glad. And you know, again, we talked earlier about some of the other tasting senses, romantic or otherwise, and that sense of something you used to do, history, what you used to do in day-to-day life is something I really love. I spent 2 years working out in Asia, and I did exactly as you just described. One of my routines, one of my traditions, one of the things I look forward to about the international commute was always stopping off in duty free, almost to the point where I would make sure I left 30 minutes in the journey to just go and spend 30 minutes in duty free and not feel rushed. And that was quite early on in my personal whiskey journey. But I loved it, and I found it really educational, actually, and spending a bit of time being guided through whiskies at that point I was probably not very familiar with was great.
Is my memory correct that Ardmore doesn't only produce peated whiskies? This is a small proportion of their production. The normal production is non-peated.
Yeah.
No, all Ardmore's peated. You might be thinking of Bunnahabhain.
No, I don't think so. I
think Ardmore do an unpeated one as well. What's it called? Ardlair something.
Oh, that'd be a crime.
I
That'd be
think
like
they call it
unpeated.
Ardlair or something for the commercial market.
I've thrown a bomb into this conversation.
I'd bow John's greater experience.
Ed, your 30 minutes in duty free wouldn't suit Nigel. Whenever we go up north as a group, we have to be at the airport 4 hours beforehand, because otherwise he panics. So the half hour's no good for Nigel.
Brilliant. I'd be more than happy spending more time. That'd be A-okay.
It's not when your flight's at 7 and you've got to be there at 3.
All right, I stand corrected on that point.
And also, generally, it's marked by how many free drams you can get from World of Whiskey before you get on the plane.
It always makes it.
I can't believe how hurtful you boys have been over the years.
His sidekick.
I've never let you down, have I?
His sidekick, who's not here, comes to the rescue. Says, "I'm not buying any whiskies, but I'll have those half dozen. Thank you very much."
With Mike, has got his credit card.
Yeah.
Oh, you're okay.
It's always my fault.
Kalila, by the way, is fantastic.
Well, look,
Mike, we're not there yet.
We can use it as a segue. We can use it as a segue into our 6th and final dram, and then we can enjoy a wrap up and debate as to what we think of the 6th overall. So we are sticking with a bit of peat with this Kalila. It is 11 years old, 2008, 59.7%. And it is a lower outturn again, somewhat curiously. This is 137 we have. So if we go to the tasting.
Is that bourbon as well, Ed? Yeah. Yeah.
It is indeed, yeah, ex-bourbon, yeah. So I am a massive Kalila fan, so I am a little bit biased when it comes to these releases. I often look for them in the outturns we do. I think what they do really well is combine those coastal tasting notes with all the other tasting notes that we'll walk through. But I think the combination therein is what I particularly like. On this one, I get quite a vivid picture of the shoreline. So I get a wet sand note, and then I get the salty seawater. Yeah, I've just seen somebody say definitely salty. Yeah, totally agree with that. And then almost next to the shoreline, you've got the land, and from the land, I get that peat note that is there. But I also get a slightly green herbaceous note, and I get some of that malt that's still there. I get a malt note. And maybe right in the background, and it's a tasting note we've used previously, but right in the background, I get a slight white wine characteristic too. On the palate, so yeah, for me, this then has kind of 3 categories of flavour. I again get coastal, so I get the sea salt, I get the ocean. The next category is kind of the core land, so you've got the core peat characteristic and the oak from the cask, together with some of the sweet malts again. And then the third is a bit of wood spice. So again, I do get notes of cinnamon and pepper in there. And on the finish,
very peppery.
yeah, so on the finish, I think you do get wood spice. I think you do get more of the pepper. I think you've got about a medium finish. And again, along with the wood spice, I get malt and more of the ocean, more of the sea salt. So with that, I will pause. And for the last time, I will throw it back to you guys.
Ed, this apparently isn't on your website. Can you explain, please?
Yeah, so you remember when I had to confess that I'd sold out?
Yeah.
No, I know. So I do have a consolation prize. In our latest outturn, added, I think about 3 days ago I did this. I added another Kalila. It is younger, so it is a slightly different beast. It's a 6-year-old. But if anyone likes that kind of peat, sea, and in the case of the 6-year-old, almost a slight bacony note, as a consolation prize, I would absolutely point to that bottle in its stead. But yeah, I'm really, really sorry. This is one of the ones
That
So
is stunning.
In that case, for us, Nige, what needs to happen is Mike needs to use Tony's card and buy one for us each.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Each.
That's only
Try
proper, isn't it?
Now, Nigel, I can't imagine you saying that 5 years ago.
Exactly, John.
Oh,
How times have changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That, however, is stunning.
Just wait till you get to your 60s and then your factories will change again.
We'll get back to my
I
60s.
can't
I'm more
wait
like
to get to my
Boat 12
60s,
again.
John.
Neither can I, Mike. Neither can I.
But John, what you say is absolutely true, and you know that the other lads know that Nigel and I went to a London weekender, and I've forgotten the distillery. Nigel, help me out here. Oh, Lafroig.
Yeah.
We went to the Lafroig stand, and Nigel's opening line was, "I don't like your whiskey. What can you do?"
How do you win friends and influence people?
No. But John,
by Nigel's standards at one of those things, that's quite diplomatic, to be fair.
You know what I was like as well. And at the end of the day, we both bought a bottle. And when I messaged the other lads,
you know Lafroig,
Lafroig, yes.
Yeah.
And when I messaged
the story of my heart.
Well, when I messaged the lads and said we both bought a bottle of Freud Select, they all went, "How much have you two had to drink?"
So let me ask you guys: have you gone past Lafroig Select now into other Lafroig expressions?
I have a lovely 18-year-old in my cupboard still.
Okay.
Yeah.
You should probably let her out for a bit of fresh air.
What's her name?
I wouldn't do that, Aidan. She'd probably get me arrested.
This is gorgeous.
Because let me tell you a little story. Sorry, Ed. I mean, I was on a bus tour a few years ago in Islay, and I was sitting next to John Campbell, the manager of Lafroig, and Simon Brooking, who's the US ambassador. And with me was my wife. I said to her, my wife hates Lafroig, but she actually quite likes Lafroig Select. And they said that's what Lafroig Select was deemed to do, was to bring new people into the category. They didn't make it very heavy, Lafroig. Obviously it worked for you two as well.
Worked for me. Worked for me.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
That was incredible. I was getting definitely the malt, and the sea spray on wheat.
And I've messaged him to wake him
He's
up.
moving though, because look, the pictures going
And
funny
I'm
in the
also
background.
thinking that. I mean, actually on the para, I was getting less of the peat, more of a ginger spice, roasted walnuts, that kind of thing, you know.
Yeah. I can see where you're going with that. I can totally see where you're going with that. Like I said at the beginning, I am a bit biased. I loved every release we've done from this distillery. We did one again. I probably shouldn't say this because I don't have any, but this was a while ago. It was beginning of the year. We did a Kalila 12. And that's just won a gold award in the, I think it's the International Spirits Awards.
Oh, good. Well done.
Thank you. So yeah, it's distillery that's close to my heart. I think it's delicious. I think it ticks a lot of boxes, which is brilliant. And I'm really glad you like it. As I say, it's a shame I don't have any of this one, but I can swing it as a positive and say it's good news because actually, as well as trying this one, if you try the 6-year-old, you'll have tried 2 instead of only trying 1 twice. So,
yeah, Ed, I was just saying.
I love it, Ed. Love it. I'll tell you something else, Ed. What is amazing, just go back to what you said before about how different distilleries create different flavours. Remember that Kalila and Lagavulin start off exactly the same peated malt level, you know?
Yeah.
Same level of peating in their malt.
Yeah.
Look how differently they come out because of the way they actually make the whiskey afterwards.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you know, if you follow that logical train through to its conclusion and you look at the raw ingredients involved in whiskey, I mean, there's not a lot to play around with on paper. That's right. The same ingredients. How much variation could you create? And yet, as we all recognize, it is phenomenal. It's absolutely incredible. And I said it before, I'll say it again. It's the science and the art, and I think that is wonderful.
Ed, I don't mean to blow my own trumpet here, but I want to. After tonight, I think Chris and I have done a good choice of choosing whiskies tonight. And I know that you sent a kind of a suggestion list, and then we worked our way off of that. We kind of had a look at what was available on the site and everything from that. But I'd just like to think that the two of the whiskies that we've chosen tonight have been sold out, which obviously means that they were obviously a great choice, and everyone's raving about it already. But I would just like to say, you know, I feel like we've you know, it's been a great night. All 6 whiskies have been great. You know, I don't think we've had any negative comments at all.
None at all.
Everyone's really enjoyed themselves.
Excellent.
Can I just echo that, guys? Chris and you, Aidan, have done a marvellous job in choosing these. Ed, these have been incredible.
Yeah.
Honestly, if I was scoring them, there'd be nothing less than an 89 here. Fantastic. Oh, brilliant. Well done. And well presented as well, Ed. Thank you very much.
I make it up as I go along, John. But no, that's very kind of you to say. And I genuinely, I've been really looking forward to this evening. It sounds slightly sycophantic, but we are all a small team. We do it because we absolutely love it. And a big part of the love for the whiskey is doing this, whether it's in a bar, real life, virtual. It is being able to share a dram. And I sometimes reflect with surprise that whiskey has this ability to bring together loads of different people who might not know each other at 7:20 one evening, but 2 hours later you're all really enjoying.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what I've done tonight. So thank you once again for having
Brilliant.
me.
No, thank you, Ed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. Yes.
Coming down. Time.
I think not only have the whiskey's been really good, I think the ordering has been pretty perfect as well.
Oh, Rob, stop, please.
because we've all had sort of times in the past with some of the previous tastings. I think in retrospect, maybe we'd have preferred to taste one before another, just for one reason or another. I think tonight was pretty spot on.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually saying to Dad earlier that the first three, I felt like they complemented each other perfectly. You know, just having them one after the other just really went well. And then the second half was all that kind of, it just went on from there. It just got even better. So yeah, I can't say, but you know, perfect. So thank you very much, Ed.
No, I'm delighted. I'm really, really delighted. I have to say the ordering is one of the things I do find, I think, the trickiest. I find it very easy to pick the whiskies, but yeah, the nuances of ordering is probably something I'm still learning myself, so I wouldn't profess to get it right every time. But I'm glad it's worked tonight, and I'm really glad that they've been enjoyed.
Yeah, it's been great.
I think it's been good as well. Because normally when we do tastings, what we typically do is I either myself or Aidan will say to the speaker, we'll be like, oh, what would you recommend? Like when we order the bottles. So what we'll do is we'll start bottling them, and then we'll label them, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then give them out. Whereas this time we were sort of like, look, let's just write what they are, and then we'll sort of leave it last minute as to you know, what the ordering is going to be and see how it goes. But yeah, I think it's been absolutely amazing tonight.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, that's
I've got a message.
Can he do blind tastings with single cask whiskey? Because as Ed was saying earlier, it's a representation which is not particularly, doesn't necessarily reflect that distillery's normal output. So you have to tell people what it is.
Yeah, I agree.
She said just giving him a nudge, and I'll just put as long as he's okay. I don't know. No.
What was that, Mike?
Are you okay there, Mike?
Yeah, no. If you haven't noticed, Danny's slumped over. So I've just texted his other half to give him a nudge, but apparently he's been down the pub all afternoon.
Oh, dear. Mike, I think you need to go around and sort him out again.
Good man. Good man.
He's only my brother-in-law. Thankfully, I'm not blood related.
Actually, Terry's closer. Terry would be able to sort him out.
It's very good tasting.
Yeah, excellent. Really enjoyed that.
Fantastic, Ed. Thank you very much.
I have to say, with the way things are going, Zoom is the way to go for a while yet.
Oh, very good.
Oh, that's embarrassing.
What?
Danny.
It reminds me of you, Martin, in Glasgow.
Only once, but not in front of so many people.
Can we get a recording of this?
Sorry, what has happened, Mike?
Yeah.
Look, if you look on your screen, John, you might have to swipe across.
Okay.
Danny is like coma.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, look out.
He's gone
back
again.
up again.
Oh, no, he's back
Mike,
up.
only the host can video it.
Ah, right, okay.
Chris, Aidan, get it.
This is going to go on YouTube later, don't worry.
Yeah,
Don't worry, Martin.
Oh, what a mess.
Good night, Tom. Thank you. Very good night.
Yes.
Text me saying.
What? Me? I'm not asleep, no.
No. All right, Dan.
Yep.
Oh, I do like that.
Right. Good
He's
night,
gone.
lads.
Yep. See you guys.
Good night, guys. Great
Bye,
tasting.
guys.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks all. Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Yes, good night.
Why not?